Hi guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make this gorgeous bridal robe, and if that's something that you'd like to see, definitely keep watching. It promises to be another fun and detailed tutorial. If you're new here, welcome. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you don't miss out on the awesome content that I have for you. You also want to give this video a thumbs up because I'm very sure you're going to enjoy the video. Without further ado, we're going to get into the video. Enjoy the video, guys. To start off, you need to make a chemise, and if you don't know what a chemise is, it's a loose-fitted undergarment for women, and they basically just wear it under like robes, under some outfits that are see-through, anything that is basically sheer. So I'm holding a chemise that I made right now, and if you don't know how to make a chemise, don't worry, I've got a detailed tutorial. So just click on the link in the icon above as well as in the description bar below, and you will see the detailed tutorial showing you how to make a chemise from scratch. So go ahead and make your chemise. It's absolutely easy to make, and if you don't want to make a chemise, you can opt to wear a bodysuit on the inside of your robe as well. You would also need some fur or synthetic feathers. So obviously these are synthetic and this is like a fur. So in the picture that I have on the thumbnail, this is not what I use. I actually use some feathers, but I didn't have that and I didn't find that in the market anymore. So I opted for some fur this time. You'd also need your tulle fabric, and I've got this off-white or ivory tulle fabric here, and that's what I'm using. It has stretch in one way and the other way is not as stretchy. You would also need your metal rule, and this is because we're going to be altering our pattern. You need your fabric scissors, of course. You need your paper scissors because again we're altering our pattern and working with pattern. You need your measuring tape. You need your marker. You need your pencil. Actually, you need your pencil, not your marker. I'm using a marker for the purpose of this video. And lastly, you need your pattern. If you don't know how to make this robe pattern, do check out the video that I've linked in icons above as well as in the description bar below. On this channel, we've made this pattern, or we made this particular one on this channel, so please check it out. First things first, we're going to alter the pattern, and the reason why we need to alter it is that because for this particular robe it doesn't overlap, so we're going to get rid of the overlapping side. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, when you watch the video on how to make or how to draft the robe pattern, you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. So you want to rule a slant line from the top so that it gets to the bottom and you can cut off that overlap, the 4 inches overlap that we left, you know, while making the pattern. So just like I've done with the green marker, you want to draw your new line in, and like I said, with this particular rope they don't overlap, they only just meet at the center, so that's absolutely fine. Due to the style of this robe, it's absolutely important that you determine the finished length of the robe before you start anything. And the reason I say that is because the robe has an attachment at the bottom, if you notice, as you can see from the picture on the screen. And you will notice that that attachment takes some length out of the finished length. So for instance, you need to determine what you want your finished length to be and then take away, you know, the fabric that you need for the extension. So for example, if you want your finished length of the robe to be about 42 inches, then you want the extension to be about 9 or 8 inches. You will need to take away 8 or 9 inches from the finished length. So 42 minus 9 inches, and that would give you 33 inches. I hope that makes sense. So luckily for me, I didn't have to reduce the length of my pattern because the length was absolutely fine. It was just perfect. So I didn't have to do that. So the next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and cut out your back piece, and of course because you're cutting out the back piece, the back will be on fold. So I've gone ahead to fold my tulle fabric, as you can see, and while you're folding, it's very important to note that your stretchiest part of the fabric, that's where the stretch is, should be horizontal. That should be around, you know, the circumference measurements. You don't want to put the stretch on the length so that your robe doesn't start to droop. So you basically want to make sure that when you're folding, the stretchiest part of your net or your tulle should be horizontal. Go ahead and pin the back piece in place, making sure it's on fold, and then go ahead and mark out the sewing allowances. So by the neckline, you have a sewing allowance of half an inch by the shoulders, half an inch around the armhole, half an inch around the side, and then half an inch at the hem area. After marking out the sewing allowance, you want to go ahead and cut. For those of you who don't know, I make robes for a living and I have a page dedicated to that on Instagram. The link is in the description bar below, and I'll also be having a workshop on how to make robes pretty soon, so you guys keep an eye out if that's something that you might be interested in. Follow me on my Instagram page and then I will announce the details for the robe making workshop so that you guys don't miss out on that. After cutting out the back piece, go ahead and unpin it. Next, we'll need to cut out the front piece, but before we do that, we need to alter our pattern by cutting out the new neckline that we drew. So remember that line that we drew? Now we're cutting it off so that we can have what we need for the front piece. For the front piece, we're going to be cutting out 2 of that and they will not be unfolded. That's because it's open in the front. Go ahead and fold the fabric into 2 and then place the front piece pattern on it. Pin the fabric down and then mark out the sewing allowances. At the center front, which is the slant line with the green marker that we did last, you'll need a sewing allowance of 1 inch. And the reason you need 1 inch is because you'll need to hem the center front area, so you need to fold it twice. So you need a sewing allowance of 1 inch there. However, on the shoulders, at the armhole, at the side seam and at the hem, you need your sewing allowance of 1/2 inch, which is exactly the same thing that we did for the back piece. After marking out the sewing allowance, go ahead and cut it up as shown. Separate the pattern from the fabric by taking out the pins, and then afterwards go ahead and pin the pieces together around the side seam. The reason I ask you to pin the pieces together around the side seam is that so that you don't get confused, because tulle has no front and it has no back. Afterwards, go ahead and hem along the center front. You want to hem by folding in 1/2 inch twice, all the way from top to the bottom. After hemming the center front for the 2 front pieces, here's what it looks like. And as you can see, I hemmed it all the way from top to the bottom by folding it 1/2 inch twice. I also left the pin that we put at the side seam in place. So now it's time for us to turn the back neckline. And of course, I'm going to be using my bias strip. Go ahead and cut out a bias strip with your tool, and if you don't know how to do this, check out the video that I've linked in the iCard above as well as in the description bar. I also have a detailed video showing you how to finish off a neckline with some bias strip, so go ahead and watch those videos. After finishing off the back neckline with the bias strip, here's what it looks like. Next, we're going to be putting the pieces together and we're going to be using the method known as the French seam. The French seam basically encloses one seam into another so that the outfit looks nice, and it's commonly used for things like tulle. So because we're working with tulle, you can't go over it with your serger or your overlocking machine. It's best to, finish it off with a French seam, and that's the approach I'm going to be showing you guys today. To do the French seam, you want to place the right side of the outfit on the table. So you want the wrong side facing you and the right side facing the table. So we're starting with the back piece. I've gone ahead to put the wrong side facing the fabric that I put on the table and then the wrong side facing me. Then you want to also place, the front piece on the corresponding side. Now, normally when we're sewing, we make sure that the right sides are facing each other. In this case, you want to make sure that the wrong sides are facing each other. That means that one right side is facing the table and then one right side is facing you. Essentially, we'll be sewing on the right side. To further explain what I mean, I have these two pieces of fabric here. One side is shiny and one side is dull. The shiny side is actually the right side, while the dull side is the wrong side. To do the French seam, you want to go ahead and place the fabric on each other. You want to make sure that the wrong sides are facing each other. That means the shiny side is facing me on one side and then it's facing the table on the other side. Go ahead and sew these pieces together on about 1/4 of an inch. After sewing the pieces together, here's what it looks like. Flip it over so that you have the wrong side facing you this time. Now you want to make sure that you have the previous stitch enclosed in the new stitch you're about to make. If you feel like the allowance that you left is too much, you can go ahead and trim it in place and then redo that. So you want to fold this over to the wrong side now, and then you want to go ahead and sew. That way you're enclosing the previous stitch. So basically that's how a French seam is done, and as you can see, it looks really neat when you're done. So I'm going to go ahead and join the shoulder on this one as well as the side on this one using the French seam approach. After sewing with the French seam approach, here's what it looks like, and as you can see, it looks really neat and nice. So this is the wrong side and this is the right side. It looks really nice, and I also did that for the side seam as well. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. However, this time I'm going to show you guys the French seam in details. To explain the French seam again, go ahead and place the front piece on the back piece, making sure the wrong sides are facing each other. That means the right side is facing you. Then go ahead and sew it together on 1/4 of an inch as shown. Afterwards, you want to go ahead and turn it over so that you have the wrong side outside now. And then you want to go ahead and enclose that stitch in place. At this point, you are literally done, and this is what it should look like. Next, go ahead and measure the entire hem of the robe. This will help us indicate how wide the fabric will be cutting for the extension piece will be. We already know that the fabric length for the extension piece is 9 inches using the calculation that we did earlier. So that means we'll be cutting out an extension that is about 9 inches. However, we need to know how wide we need the piece. To determine how wide you want your piece, you want to measure the hem of the robe and then multiply whatever value you get from the measuring by 3. So for instance, if you measure the hem of the robe and you get 40 inches, you will need to cut out a piece of fabric that is 40 times 3, which is about 120 inches in width. After measuring the hem of the robe, you should know the dimensions you require to cut now. Already, we know that the length of this particular fabric that we're cutting for the extension will be 9 inches. So for instance, if you measure the hem of the robe and you measure 40 inches, like I said earlier, you'll be cutting out 120 inches, which is multiplied by 3 by 9. So that means you'll be cutting out a piece of fabric that is 120 inches wide and then 9 inches long. If you measure the hem of your robe and you measure out 30 inches, you cut out a piece of fabric that is 90 inches by 9. I hope that makes sense. After cutting out the wide piece of fabric required for the extension piece, Go ahead and fold the fabric into two and then create the notch at the middle. The essence of creating a notch at the middle is so that it will help you when you're joining this piece back to the main robe piece. You'll be able to find the center and evenly distribute the gathers when we make them. Afterwards, you want to go ahead and hem the sides and the bottom. You want to fold in 1/2 inch as shown, fold that in twice and do that all the way at the side, the bottom and the other side. You want to leave the top unsewn as shown. After hemming the sides and the bottom, here's what it looks like. You want to place the fabric on the table so that the right side is facing you. And then you want to go ahead and pin the fur all through the hem. So whether you're using fur or you're using feathers, whatever it is that you're using, you're going to go ahead and pin it in place at the hem, and then you're going to go ahead and stitch it in place. I tend to stitch mine with a machine. I just go back a couple of times at different intervals, maybe about 3 inches spacing all the way. So you just repeat that until you get through the whole thing. So like I said, you can pin it in place and then just go ahead and stitch it at intervals. If you want it really full, you can double your fur piece, or if you have a fuller fur piece, it will be better. This is quite scanty, so I didn't end up doubling it, but it is quite scanty. It's not as full as I like it. So as you can see, after sewing the fur to the hem, here's what it looks like. And as you can see that I left some space, about 3 inches spacing in between. I also went ahead to do the gathers at the top, and all I did was that I put my machine on the gather setting, which is the loosest setting, and then I went ahead to sew in some gathers. After sewing and pulling the gathers, go ahead and get the main robe fabric and then fold it into two, ensuring it's evenly folded. At the hem, you want to create a notch as shown. After creating a notch at the hem, you want to go ahead and pin the notch of the main fabric or the main robe piece to the notch of the extension fabric. You want to make sure that the right sides are facing each other, and then you want to go ahead and pin the ends as well. After pinning the ends, you want to make sure that it's evenly distributed. So if you need to push the gathers in, go ahead and push it in. However, it's very important to mention that the hemming that you have on the main fabric and the hemming that you have on the extension piece at the side, they must match perfectly. So go ahead and distribute the gathers evenly, spread where you need to spread, move it where you need to move, and then pin it in place. After pinning the gathers in place all the way from the notch to the left side and from the notch to the right side, and you're happy with the result, go ahead and sew it in place by sewing it on 1/2 inch all the way from one side to the other side. After sewing, here's what it looks like, and at this point the robe is nearly finished. Next, we'll need to make the belt hole, and to make the belt hole, I recommend that you get a small strip of fabric that is about 9 inches long and about 1.5 inches wide. Then you go ahead and pipe it as shown. To pipe, you want to fold in 1/2 inch on both sides and then fold that over just like a sandwich and then top stitch it. After piping, here's what it looks like, and I've gone ahead to cut it into two so that they measure about 4 inches each. To attach the belt hole to the appropriate place, you want to go over and turn your robe to the side. From the side where the armhole starts, you want to go ahead and mark 5.5 inches and then 7.5 inches. So this is stable for every size, because if you use my method to draft your robe pattern, it will work for every size. When you mark the points, you want to go ahead and pin the bell hole in place as shown. So you want to pin it at 5.5 first, and then you want to flip it over and pin it at the 7.5 mark as well. After pinning it in place, you want to go ahead and stitch it down, and then you want to go ahead and repeat this for the other side as well. After stitching it in place, here's what it looks like. So at this point, we're almost done, and the next thing to do will be to do the sleeves. So you want to go ahead and measure out the armhole as shown. The sleeves on this robe are made by cutting out a 3/4 sleeves and attaching that to a flare. If you don't know how to take your sleeve measurements, check out the video that I've linked in the iCards above, as well as in the description bar on how to take body measurements. You would also need to check out the video that I have on how to cut and sew sleeves. It would help you when you're making your sleeves. Go ahead and fold the fabric into 4, and like I said earlier, you want the stretch to be on the horizontal, not on the vertical. Then go ahead and mark out the sleeve measurements. So you need to mark out the armhole as well as the sleeve length. After doing that, you want to go ahead and draft out the sleeve as you should, and then cut out the sleeve. After cutting out the sleeves, remember to notch the sleeve crown as well as the center of the ends of the sleeve. And the reason why you do that is so that you can find the midpoint, and then when you want to join the flare to the ends of the sleeves, it'll be very easy. Next, we'll need to cut out the flare, and if you don't know how to cut a full circle and you would like me to do a tutorial on that, let me know in the comment section. However, if you want to have a vague idea, check out the video that I have on how to make a 2-tiered skirt. I briefly explained how to cut a circle in that video, and I'm sure it's going to help you. So to cut a circle, because we're cutting for both sleeves at the same time, I've gone ahead to first fold my fabric into 2. After folding my fabric into 2, I'm going to go ahead and fold it into 4. So altogether, I folded my fabric into 8. I'll be cutting out 2 full circles, that's 2 360-degree circles. After folding the fabric appropriately, I had gone ahead to take the measurement at the hem of the sleeves earlier. So I'm going to be marking the radius that I require, and the formula to calculate the radius that you require is the total measurement that you took divided by 2 pi. So like I said again, if you would like a detailed explanation on how to cut out circles, let me know and I'll be very happy to make a video. So go ahead and cut out a full circle depending on the length that you want. I'm keeping this as conservative as possible, so I'm cutting out a length of about 9 inches. By the time I hem it and then sew, half an inch at the top to the main sleeve, I'll be left with about 7.5 inches, which is just fine. After cutting out the circle, here's what the circles look like. So I have 2 circles. I go ahead and split them into 2 so that they are opened up. So I'm just putting the pieces together so it can give you a vague idea of what the sleeves will look like when we're done. And here's what it looks like when you join it together. So to move on, you want to find the center of the circle. I'm just going to notch the center of the circle. After doing that, you want to hem the ends of a circle. And in case you don't know, hemming the ends of a circle can be really hard work. Again, if you'd like me to touch on that, let me know and I'll be happy to. After hemming the ends of the circle, go ahead and attach your feathers or fur to the end, and you want to do that the exact same way we did for the extension bit. You want to just sew it at different intervals. After doing this, this is what it looks like. You want to find the center of the circle, and then you want to create a notch at the center. After doing that, you want to now join the sleeves to the flare. To join the sleeves to the flare, you also want to find the center of the sleeves at the hem. I told us to do that earlier, but in case you haven't done it, you can go ahead and create a notch now. Then you want to go ahead and pin the notch on the flare to the notch on the sleeves. You want to make sure that the right sides are facing each other, and then you want to work your way from the center all the way to the ends. It is possible that you will have to do some pleats because the flare might be bigger than the main fabric or than the sleeves, but that's absolutely normal. I had to do some pleats as well. After pinning the 3/4 sleeves to the flare extension, go ahead and sew it in place on a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Remember to repeat all these steps for the second sleeve as well. After sewing the 3/4 sleeves to the flare, here's what it looks like, and as you can see, I had to do some gathers around the middle just so that it will fit, but at this point, here's what it looks like. So the next thing to do is for us to close the sleeves, and in this process, I used the French seam. So as you can see, I'm pinning this together on the right sides. That means the wrong sides are touching each other and the right side is facing me, and I'm doing that all the way from the top of the sleeves to the hem of the flare. After pinning the entire sleeves together, go ahead and sew it on a 1/4 inch. After sewing the sleeves on a 1/4 inch sewing allowance, go ahead and trim off all the excess allowance. After trimming off the excess allowance, turn the sleeves inside out. After turning the sleeves inside out, go ahead and sew it in place on a 1/4 inch, enclosing the previous stitch. Here's what the French seam looks like, and at this point the sleeves are ready. So go ahead and install the sleeve or sew the sleeve to the main robe, and if you don't know how to do this, check out the video in the description bar on how to cut and sew sleeves. In that video, I showed in details and I explained in details how to sew sleeves, and it's the same method most of the time. Alright guys, so at this point the sleeves have been sewn and this is what the robe looks like. Like I said, this isn't full, but if you want yours fuller, you can use fuller fur or feathers, or you can just double the fur that you have. But at this particular point, the robe is now finished. I've gone ahead to trim off all the loose thread, and at this point the robe is now done. You should also go ahead and make a belt for the robe, and if you don't know how to do that, watch my video on how to make a robe. I actually made a belt in that video, so please go ahead and watch it and make a belt for this robe. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. We've come to the very end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it was worth your while. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to leave your comments, suggestions and feedback in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much guys, and I'll see you in my next video next week. Bye.